Today for our hands-on coding activity, we are going to be building our own computer. And when you're using these sets, you're going to have a very descriptive set of directions within this book. You're going to have all of these pieces, and this placemat is here specifically so that when you're unpacking your Kano kit, you can lay all of the pieces out so that, number one, you know nothing's missing. Number two, so you can see the names. This is the brain block, battery, power plug, so that you know what all of the names are, especially since it's going to be referring back to those names in the directions. So first step is the first step to sit all of your pieces out on the placemat. This piece is going to be the smallest piece. You're going to be taking the micro SD out as part of the memory. So make sure this is the piece that I get the most nervous about. Make sure that you're keeping track of this at all times. And I'm going to tell you a little housekeeping trick about that in a second. But before we go any further, I want to talk to you about how all of the pieces of the computer are color-coded as to their purpose. So all of these gray pieces, their functions are blocks. They're to hold other computing pieces in place. So we've got the brain block that holds the Raspberry Pi, which is the brain. We have the data block, which holds the USB ports and collects all the data for processing, and the cable block, which will hold all of the cables in your directions. So these gray pieces, their function is to hold the pieces in place on your computer when you're using it. All of the red pieces work together to power the device. So we have our battery, we have our power cables, the button, the charging cables, the micro cable button to plug it in for charging. And I'll show you, I've already charged the battery, so we won't need a few of the pieces, and I'll show you that in a second. The yellow HDMI cord is what sends binary code to the monitor of your computer that you're building and turns them into the pixels that allows you to see the image on the screen. So that's the yellow. Anything that's blue is the processing unit. So this is the USB board. It processes everything that you plug into the USB. This is the Raspberry Pi. It's essentially the brains of the computer. Black is memory, and like I said, it's this micro SD card, and that's the memory for your Kano computer. Blue is your speaker or the audio output. So that's where you're going to hear sounds from your computer. And then the orange are the input devices. So this is where you would use these to talk to your computer, tell it what to do, code it. The keyboard and touchpad, obviously you'd be clicking like a mouse or typing what to do on the computer. And your sound sensor is essentially your microphone where you would be able to code it to respond to sounds or words. Okay, so let's say we have all of our pieces out here. One piece of good housekeeping is that these pieces of styrofoam, number one, do not play with them. If you're not using them, put them back in the box. These are important to keep all of the pieces safe and from breaking because they're very fragile. So speaking of the pieces being fragile, if you're putting something together and it doesn't seem to be quite fitting or you feel like you're forcing it, raise your hand, I'll come over and help you and see if you're putting it on there right, okay? Don't force it because like I said, these are real computer pieces, so we need to be gentle with them because they are rather fragile. And we're not playing with the styrofoam or ripping it because it'll rip by accident. It's just styrofoam, and we need it to keep our pieces safe and from scratching one another. And speaking of scratching, when you lift the top section of your Kano kit off, at the bottom, you're going to have the screen. You're going to be building on the screen on this side, so I want you to take the biggest piece of styrofoam, of foam, lay it down on the table, and place your screen on top of the styrofoam so it doesn't get scratched while you're working on the table. Also at the bottom, you're going to see the really long power cord and the plug-in piece. I know that they're on the mat for you, but you can leave them here because I've already charged the battery, so you don't need them. So just leave them here, and that's one less piece that you have to worry about putting away later, okay? So we have this laying on the foam mat. As you can see with the processor for the monitor, all of the processing pieces, you want to hold them by their edges because these are all chips and we don't want the oils from our fingers to react with any of the pieces. So when possible, try to handle these pieces by the edges as much as possible so that we don't ruin them, okay? And then you're going to use the directions. Now that we've gone over how to handle the pieces with care, we're going to turn to our direction pamphlet that is in your box, and it's going to go over all of the pieces with you just like I did at the very beginning, but you want to make sure you just read over this. It's going to give you some extra details that I did not give you, and it has pictures to go along with the wording. Grab your power board and line up the brains pins. Make sure to cover all of the pins. If you don't cover all of the pins, it's not going to work. So you want to make sure that you follow those directions when you are putting it together. Another piece that people I see a common mishap we have when putting it together is you also want to pay very, very close attention to the illustrations, because for here example is where a lot of people mess up. They put the USB board on the data block incorrectly. You want to take notice of what is on the top. Is it the green or the silver? Because if you don't put them on correctly, the back of the computer is not going to fit. It's not going to fit. So you're going to follow these step-by-step directions and all the way through until you are able to get it on. And like I said, you can skip this plugging in because I've already charged it for you. So then you'll skip ahead to page 70 for the sensor and turning it on. And let me show you what you're going to do once you turn it on. Okay, once you are logged in, you are going to click on the top account. And you're going to type in Kano, K-A-N-O. Login. And it's going to take a second. Okay. If your Wi-Fi is not connected, you're going to click on that. Oops, I keep forgetting this is not a touch screen. And you want to make sure that you are on CCPS. All right. CCPS, great. We're connected. Now, you can explore any of the apps on this first page. They're all things that you should be able to follow the on-screen directions to do. Kano code, make art, hack Minecraft. We've worked in Scratch before, so you can absolutely do that. Make ping pong and make snake. These are all great applications to start on. But you can also click down here to see, I do not have a motion kit or a pixel kit, so that's not going to work. So if you click on one that asks you for those features, that is not going to work. We are not using YouTube. It's not a thing in here. Okay, so I feel as if we're probably going to stick to the very first page. We do have Tux Paint in here. I feel like you will get the most bang for your buck if you explore these apps today. So let's work in that. And that's what you're doing on Kano.